Welcome to the preview, fuckers.
Ew.
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 Ew, Matthew.
We agree
Ew.
that ew. Oh, fuck that. Goodbye.
Yeah, I have one question. How high were you?
First question, how high were you?
That's fucking epic.
You're gonna need at least one tinfoil hat for your segment.
Yes.
Like, at least one.
University, he did a bunch of crap. Nicolas Cage. Hey fuckers, how's it going? Let's dive right into this because I have
Tits first into this.
Yes.
The Berkshire abductions. No one that this happens to calls it abduction.
That's what I'm calling it.
Okay.
Right, but that's not what they call it.
That's
Hey,
not okay.
I mean, good on them. Good on them. I'm not going to give them. I'm going to try my hardest not to give a lot of people shit in this one.
The Berkshire Experiences. How's
Okay.
that?
That
that.
sounds like something that went on at Woodstock. But
I was just going to say
same
that.
year. Same year.
It did happen in 1969.
It did.
So there was a whole lot of experiences going on.
It's true.
And acid is
A lot.
released through the country.
I will save that theory for later. The date is September 1st, 1969, and by all accounts, it was a very hot day. Everyone says that it was steamy, it was uncomfortably warm, it was unseasonably warm, blah, blah, blah. Looking at some of these pictures and some of the Google Maps and stuff like that, it's very picturesque. It's very, very pretty. And one of the podcasts I listened to, the host is actually from around there and would summer there from time to time. And he described it as kind of artsy. He described it as kind of hippie, but I don't necessarily get like the hippie vibe, but I definitely get the boho, laid back artsy vibe.
Maybe he didn't have another analogy for it.
This was the one podcast where someone's like, I know this area. So I thought that was interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, in everything I've seen, too, it looks like small-town USA in every picture they like to show.
Right. What I thought was really nice about it is it reminds me kind of Door County, Wisconsin. And it's absolutely beautiful. It looks like Schitt's Creek.
It does.
That's what it looks like. It looks like Schitt's Creek.
Kat just introduced me to that show.
I
is
love that
great.
show so much. I'm David Rose. I'm just David Rose.
Yeah.
I like
I
him
agree.
so much. I want to
You
open
are.
my own little apothecary.
Oh, I love that.
That'd be so cool. Now that I'm done daydreaming about what my life would be like. I'm sure if you guys are familiar with this at all, you guys probably got turned onto it by the new series of Unsolved Mysteries. The show opens with Jane Green. I love her so much.
She reminds me of the old lady from Moana.
Yes, because she definitely has a very, this is how shit is, and
Yeah.
this is how it's going to be. The opening scene, she's talking about this experience, and she goes, and then you people called me. I stopped telling the story, and she's like, you people called me. It was great.
As much as I have the feeling how I aspire to be Dan Aykroyd when I get older and just crazy and make my own vodka and rant about aliens and just be glorious in every way possible, you want to be her.
I do. I want to be her.
Cool.
She lived in Great Barrington, which is a town in Berkshire County, since she was 12. Her family owned the Rexall Pharmacy, which is the oldest pharmacy in the area. And she's very,
Very proud of that.
very proud of it. Because her family owned the pharmacy, she got a bit of clout. She knew what was going on in the town. That's where people went. It was a pharmacy, not like a Walgreens. You go and you grab a sandwich and then you go pick up your prescriptions, but then you also grab some lotion. I'm thinking what's his name from It's a Wonderful Life? Mr. Gower. Like his pharmacy.
Yeah, but you can get your liquor, you can get gauze, and then you can order a Reuben, and it's great. Exactly.
Right, and that's this kind of feel. You know, you walk in there and you pull down the thing, it lights, and you go, hot dog, and you keep going.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
She tells the story about how she was heading from Stockbridge to Great Barrington. And I believe Stockbridge is to the south of Great Barrington. And she was in the car with her friend Mary DeGrace, who has since passed. And as they were driving, they saw bright lights. And she just talks about how insanely bright these lights are. So naturally, as a natural-born skeptic, this woman figured there was just a really big accident. So the car in front of her and her pulled over to the side of the road to see what the hell was going on, because she keeps talking about how bright these goddamn lights are, and she can't fucking see anything. So
Dude,
she
that's
pulled
gonna be
over.
so annoying.
Well, and I mean, all I
Like-
can think of is like, you know, when you're driving, either when the sun is rising or the sun is setting, and it's so fucking bright, and you're driving right into
Yes,
it, and you
it's
just
horrible.
you can't see, and you're thinking to yourself, I should just pull over. I should just pull over because I can't fucking see a damn thing.
Yeah, so I don't think most people can fathom how bright this truly is.
And we also have to say, I want to say again that this happened in 1969. So they had black and white TVs, and that was the extent. Like, that was the most technologically advanced thing that people would have in their homes. People need to remember that your iPhone or your Galaxy is more technologically advanced than what landed on the moon.
Yeah, true.
That is the level of technology we're talking about. So when they say bright lights, it's bright. And how she's talking about it, you can tell she's not experienced lights like this since.
That has to be pointed out.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll probably point it out a couple more times just because it kept being pointed out. The car in front of Jane's car pulled over, and Jane and Mary got out of the car to see what in the hell was going on. And Jane describes this huge object floating in front of her. She couldn't see the top of it. She couldn't see the bottom of it. She couldn't see either side of it. It was that huge. She also said because it was so bright and huge, she couldn't tell the color. But she talked about how quiet it was. There was no motor. Yes, tinfoil hat wearing brother to the right.
As the registered MUFON member, now I can say this. I've been waiting for this. This is one thing that has been documented in a lot of UFO sightings where someone's up close is it doesn't make noise. In the one that I registered for our Boys at Last podcast, I did not hear noise.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one I saw,
It is
no
so
noise.
fascinating at how quiet these things can be.
I saw one far away, so of course it didn't make noise. It was up in the sky. It definitely wasn't this close.
If you register sight to distance, you can hear a normal jet if it's low.
If it's low. The one that I saw was up high.
Fighter jets, when they're up high,
Yeah.
there is still a rumble, there is still a roar.
Yes, I'm just saying that this thing was up high. Like, I didn't expect to hear a noise, so of course it didn't.
One thing about that, possibly, and I'm not saying I for sure think it's aliens or whatever, but
Right.
if there were beings that were able to travel here, they would have technology like a warp drive technology to where they would be able to travel faster than sound and faster than light to get here, but faster than sound travels. And that and the time dilation, because they'd be moving through space-time, not just space, I think would make it to where you wouldn't hear anything.
It's Ziltoid, and he wants his cup of coffee.
Thank you, Spring Heel Jack, for the nice letter in my latest shipment. Thanking us and congratulating us on the podcast.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
I hope they listen.
I hope so. I'm going to be ordering from them this week, actually.
Yes.
I'm excited.
So good. What I think is really interesting about Jane saying that it was silent is something that we're going to hear in Tom's recount of the event.
Yep.
Horse Tom, because that's how I'm going to start referring to them, because there's multiple Toms and multiple Janes. Jane says it was big and bright and quiet, and in a matter of seconds, it lifted up and flew over the mountain and was gone.
But that would make sense with the time dilation and the being faster than sound. and there being a field around it that would distort sound and light. That does actually make sense.
It does.
It is the most logical, underreported thing, and I think that's what threw me off so much, is how much logic goes into
like how it all shows
how
up.
everything went down. It was a balloon. It was this. It was that. And
she got back in the car with her friend Mary, and they drove to the drugstore. That's where Jane's husband was working, and she told him what she saw. So naturally, he says, go to the radio station and tell Tom J. Not go to the cops. Go to the radio station. Which,
as you do.
Part of me is like, well, why would you call the cops?
I think of the time we're in.
Right,
true. 60s. Someone who actually sits there and understands the time and is like, hey, my wife's not getting the same cred I am. Hey, honey, call the cops. Or he's just being a giant douche and be like, yeah,
call the radio station,
we
honey.
got it pumping in the back. Let's see what happens here. Call the radio station.
Could be a little column A, a little column B. But Jane did know the station manager, Tom J. And apparently the first thing he said to her is, Jane, have you been drinking? And she's like, no, I have
normal
not.
Response for every UFO sighting.
Well, Mary and Jane were in the car and they saw a UFO. It's 1969. What conclusions are you going to make?
True.
Can I lay that on any thicker?
Things are good. They've had some tasty paper. Let's go.
Tom J says the stereotypical go-to answer, hey, it was fucking swamp gas. So I have heard of this several times because there has been reports, studies, whatever. I can't think of who the scientist was, but he did discount some UFO sightings as you're seeing weird orbs.
Yeah.
Is something to do with the atmosphere around swamps.
That's true.
Which is why people call it swamp gas.
Yeah.
Well, afterwards, he began receiving more and more calls from many other people saying, hey, I saw this weird fucking spaceship. And they all described it the same way, and they all had similar recounts of it. He says there was about 40 people that called this in and talked about what had happened.
Wow.
Right? They're not digital. Because this radio station, it's WSBS, the tapes were never saved. That was just standard operating procedure, and nothing exists from that night. In fact, nothing exists from that time at all, from the sound of it.
I mean, trying to look up old Doctor Who episodes. How many are missing?
Right, exactly. And I mean, that's how it is with a lot of stuff. They only saved super, super important stuff, like Kennedy got shot, things like that.
It was Deep Throat, yeah.
Right. So it's just things like that they saved, opposed to, hey, it's a bunch of people that all saw some shit one night. It's like, whatever.
And it's also 1969. The hippies are doing it.
The hippies are coming.
True.
Tune in, drop out.
My son's dressing in tie-dye. He's clearly a Satanist.
They're not cutting their hair. No, this is before the Satanic Panic.
I was going to say, that was slightly before.
But just about at the cusp of Manson, too.
This was after August of 69.
Yes! My ruined childhood made up for something!
Jane made this report. When you're watching Unsolved Mysteries, it opens with Jane talking about how her kids were hanging out in the front lawn and they saw a spaceship fly over. And they told their grandma, Jane's mom, and Jane's mom said, don't tell your mother. Jane tells her kids after Unsolved Mysteries contacts her and said, hey, I'm doing this thing about the spacecraft that we saw.
Yeah, like don't be surprised or alarmed.
And FYI, FYI. And so then they go, hey, we saw it too. And she goes, you never told me. And they go, well, you never told us. And it sounds like that happened a lot. I think it explains in part why this isn't quote unquote better recorded.
That's true.
I think that has something to do with it, is a lot of people were like, that's fucking weird. I'm not telling anyone.
Well, right. I can understand that.
I want to sit down and feed me stories and I will feed you beers.
Yeah.
If for some reason you listen to this, if you come to Norfolk, Virginia, look me up. Your first round, our 9th round. It's all on me. I just want to hear your story, dude. It would be great. You are the greatest witness I've ever seen. And every stupid, sarcastic joke that came into my brain just didn't seem right.
I do like Tom, who I will either refer to as Artist Tom or Crayola Tom. Tom Warner was 6th generation in his house. He had lived there his entire life. He still lives there now. He's the youngest of 7 children, and he was about 10 at the time that this happened.
It's adorable, but it's still weird.
What, that he was 10 at the time, or that he lives in the same house and he's 6th generation in the same house?
6th generation in the same house.
I think it's kind of cool.
It's kind of cool, but imagine Lily living in mom and dad's house.
Okay.
After one of us lived in mom and dad's house.
I mean, out on the East Coast,
I was just gonna say that's a very more normal thing on the East Coast opposed to us here in the Midwest.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people from the Salem area, they have lived there since the witch trials.
My family does go back through the witch trials. I have a great grandfather, George Jacobs, who, like I told you guys, was killed in the witch trials. You guys can actually look him up. He's in the Crucible, too, if anybody's seen the Crucible. Our family lived on the same property for like 200 years.
But Tom called himself an artist, and he says, and I quote, "My medium of choice at the time was Crayola," which is great.
So cute.
He went to his neighbor's house, the Shaws, and we're going to talk. I figured to tell Tom's story adequately, we also have to tell Jane Shaw's story, because we need to have another Jane in this story. Makes things a little confusing in the retelling. Tom went to the Shaws. They were the next door neighbors, and he was coloring with Jane and her sister Debbie. And Jane and Debbie were a little bit older, and they kind of babysat him. Jane Shaw refers to Tom Warner as Tommy, which is pretty adorable. And she still refers to him as Tommy, which again is pretty adorable.
Pretty cute.
And as Tom was coloring, a voice in his head told him to go home. Not just told him, but commanded him. And
that's got to be the scariest thing ever.
Right. Because as a 10-year-old, what do you think is going on? So he figured it was God telling him to go home. Because what else are you going to think about it? Like at 10, in 1969.
Reptilians.
So that's you wouldn't have thought that at 10.
No, I agree.
You would not have thought that at 10. No, maybe.
You would think that now, though. Like,
yes.
Let's be honest.
Every problem in life is
Matt would be like,
reptilians. The reptilians have caused it all.
Meanwhile, Matt would actually think, shit, I smoked too much. I better just go to bed.
Yeah.
So.
No, we just have another bowl and ride it through.
Ride it through.
No, see, that's when I go, I'm going to sleep.
Me too. I bitch out and go to bed. Bye.
My bed is so cozy and soft. I'm in a pillowy cocoon. That's where I go. Tom got up and said he needed to leave, and he began home. He describes it as he was running full speed and just flying, like running so fast. But then he realized he couldn't move. And Jane is reporting that she saw Tommy running as fast as he could, but in place, kind of like a dream. And she watched this light come down out of the sky and lift him up and disappeared.
That's got to be the freakiest thing.
Running at full speed, flying, but couldn't move. And he saw this UFO drop out of the sky, and it pointed a light at him. He jerked his arms back and disappeared. And watching this man show the exact spot he was in, it's kind of chilling because it's not just like he moves his arms back. It's very robotic. It looked like he got picked up by the arms. Pretty crazy. While on the ship, Tom saw Melanie. And we'll talk about Melanie here in a minute. That's really the only person he talks about seeing. But the next thing he knows is Tom was laid back down in his yard, and
he does a great flop.
He does do a pretty awesome flop of him laying down in the yard. But he's laid down in his yard. He wasn't taken out of his yard. He was taken out of the Shaw's yard. And his brother saw him being laid down in the yard and told him to run. but the light was still on Tom and he couldn't move. And the voice in his head told him that I'll be done in a minute. And then after a moment, he could move and he watched the UFO fly away. Scary as fuck. After all of this, Tom really became kind of an outsider. He had a hard time relating to people.
When you're the outsider to begin with, and then you're the crazy UFO guy.
And then you're the one that got abducted by aliens. But
dude,
not abducted.
We would love to talk to you. It would be a great time. People who haven't been enlightened by the cool shit in the world, kids, like, they suck. They suck with that shit. I love kids, by the way.
Artist Tom is very selective about like who he talks to about this. He does show us some of his artwork later on, which is why I refer to him as Artist Tom. He was not the only one that was drawing things and making pictures of this. In one of the other podcasts I listened to, they talk about how the entire class, his grade class, were drawing pictures of aliens and they were up on the bulletin boards for like weeks. But he still became kind of a self-described outsider. Jane, on the other hand, Jane Shaw, who saw Tommy running as fast as he could but then zipped off by the aliens, said that Tommy was only gone 7 minutes.
Still got to be a terrifying 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got to be a super terrifying 7 minutes. Did she have a stopwatch? How did she know it was really 7 minutes?
I put the Jiffy Pop on the stove now. And then once she heard the first pop, oh, Tommy's back. He knew the popcorn was coming.
Right. That's one thing that I have. Because even as a kid, I wasn't like, I'm going to check my watch to see what time he got lifted off.
8 minutes and 53 seconds.
If I got
I was not
a fucking alien, the first thing you would think would be like, yeah, I'm going to look at my watch because you're going to think, hey, my little brother's fucking gone.
Here's the thing. I wouldn't have done that. I know exactly what I would have done. I would have been like, fuck, I need a phone because I better call mom right now so I don't get in trouble for this. Like,
my brother got taken by aliens.
Just like when you chipped your tooth. What was the first thing I did? Looked at you, shook my head, said, go find it. We need some milk. I'm calling mom. That was what happened.
Covering your ass.
You taught me serial killers. I trained you for life.
Chipping your tooth like as soon as mom leaves because you tripped on a Nerf ball in your room and fell on a flashlight. Ha! Now the whole world knows. And it's digital, so we can never get rid of it. I do want to skip to Melanie before we talk about the Reeds, just because I mentioned Melanie in Tom the artist's story. So Melody Kirchdorfer was about 12 at the time that this happened, and she is self-described as pretty wild, which meant that she stole cigarettes out of her friend's mom's purse, or her friend stole cigarettes out of her mom's purse, or something like that. They were stealing cigarettes at 12, so they're pretty wild.
Imagine that still being wild today.
Wild.
Like, what does that translate to?
I don't know.
I mean, I guess still stealing cigarettes out of your parents' purse, or
I sip vodka out of mom's liquor cabinet and replace it with water. I don't know.
There.
I know you did. So, anyways, Melanie's sister and her were made to go get ice cream with their parents at the Dairy Queen. And she was making this big deal about what 12-year-old wants to go get ice cream with their parents and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, it would be pretty cool just to go get ice cream with my parents. I'm okay with that. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to, like, hang out with them for an extended period of time at 12. But if they're buying me ice cream, all right, I'm cool. So after they went and got ice cream, they went to Lake Mansfield and they hung out by the lake and started eating their ice cream, and her dad backed into the parking lot. And as they were sitting and eating, a bright light lit everything up, just like how the first Jane Green said. She said that everybody in the car freaked out. She freaked out, her sister freaked out, her mom freaked out. They told their dad, let's go, let's get out of here. Dad, on the other hand, was like, dude, that's awesome, let's go chase it. And they're like, no, we're not chasing it. So what does he do?
I would be that
Naturally,
dad.
he chases it.
I would be that dad.
He has 3 women screaming in the car, don't fucking chase it, and he goes and fucking chases it. What an asshole.
This guy right here.
Yep.
What an asshole.
I think I would chase it, but I don't know.
I am my
I
grandfather's
think
grandson.
I would chase it too, but if I had 3 people in the car screaming at me, don't do it, we're too scared, get the fuck away from it.
I'm saying.
I think,
Dad
majority
was
rules.
something, or Dad was just weird. We have 2 options.
Right. Melanie remembers levitating from the car and being put on a ship. No one else remembers this. Her sister doesn't remember this. Neither of her parents remember this. They remember the car speeding off, and then Melanie remembers levitating and being on a ship. And while on the ship, she remembers seeing a bunch of kids just laying there and then disappearing. She doesn't remember Tom Warner, aka Tom the artist,
But he remembers
but
her.
he remembers her, and he talks about how he remembers her eyes, and she does have these absolutely gorgeous,
Oh, they're
brilliant
beautiful.
blue eyes, and I mean, they are very striking. And they didn't really know each other before any of this happened. I mean, she was 2 years older than him, and she didn't really hang out with him, nor why would she? She's 12, he's 10.
Right.
They're very, I mean, it doesn't seem like a big deal now being 2 years apart, but back
The
then, like when I was
dating
12,
was just
why?
a fucking horror.
Yeah.
So she's going up and down leagues there.
Yeah. The next thing Melanie knows is she was alone at the lake and no one else was around. She was not put back in the car. She was left at Lake Mansfield and she had to walk home.
That sucks.
Right? Think of how terrifying that would be.
Oh, that sucks so bad.
Wow.
And like I said,
Imagine being dropped at Crystal Lake out of the sky.
right.
And you gotta walk.
Waking up in a field in the dark.
No, then you have to walk to like my.
You have to walk
You
home.
wouldn't be sober, but you just want to be fucked up.
She had to walk home. No one else was around. But when they met in real life, she felt an instant connection to him. And he talked about how he remembered her eyes. And she goes, I really didn't know him. But now when I met him, it was like family. I have a brother now. And they have this big familial connection. And she talked about how she didn't tell anybody about this. She told her boyfriend at the time, and she told her sister. That was it. So she talked about how her life was pretty normal socially. Tom with an H, Reed, and his family were new residents in town. They were originally from New York, and he really felt like an outsider. He again was about 10 at the time. His mom had bought a local restaurant, but the day that this happened, he was in a horse show. And here's me. I was like, he's into horses. And they lived on a horse farm and blah, blah, blah. They went to dinner. They were going to take the Sheffield Bridge home as it was a little shortcut. Tom and his brother Matthew, not Jeb, Matthew.
It will always be Jeb.
We're in the back seat. Tom and Matthew's mom, Nancy, was driving, and their grandma was in the front seat. And Tom was going to give his brother a little piece of candy, and grandma turned around and told him not to. Right around that time, they entered the bridge, and it was one of those big covered bridges that looks like the bridge from Beetlejuice.
Those are awesome.
Super cool. As they entered the bridge, they saw the light, and as they exited, they saw a giant ball of light. It kept becoming brighter, and they pulled over. And Tom says that he can account for about 15 minutes during the next 3 hours. Well, what I find very interesting about this, too, is Tom will share some of his experiences during this time, but he talks about how he has not shared all of his experiences publicly. But I also think it's interesting that he's keeping some of that aside, because think about when the police are investigating a case, they don't tell you all of the leads. I was hearing on one of the podcasts I listened to how Tom talked about being in a giant airline hangar or warehouse type building, sitting on a table, and he did see beings with cone-ish shaped heads coming at him. It sounds like the mouth was at one end, but the eyes were at the other, but how it was sounded like it was more like Beetlejuice, kind of like what Alec Baldwin does, opposed to like your stereotypical grays. So it sounds a little different than that, which I thought was really weird.
That is.
His brother also has said that he was in a similar type room, but never saw Tom, which I think is very interesting, which kind of lends to that theory about moving space and time or being interdimensional beings or something like that.
Yeah, because then one person saw other children, and then the two Toms did not see anybody.
Artist Tom did describe seeing Melanie on the ship. Melanie described seeing a bunch of children.
Yeah.
She was talking about how they were all suspended in midair, whereas Horse Tom / Diner Tom is talking about how he was on a table by himself.
That's really odd.
After all of this happened, the Reeds became more of an outsider, and he would get into fistfights and stuff because they weren't shy about talking about what happened. Like, they would say what happened, and it just got very bad. It's very heartbreaking to hear Nancy, Tom's mom, talk about it, because moving there was her dream, to live in a place like that, and they ended up having to leave because they got harassed so much.
Yeah, to the point that someone jumped up on a table and whipped their wang out.
Right. Like, in the middle of the restaurant.
Just awful. Yeah. And Tom actually reported this was not the first UFO he and his brother saw. There was one in 1966 and 1967, both in the turtle shell-shaped UFO that everyone's reporting.
Kind of building off Horse Tom's story, Nancy was at the Village Green restaurant, and she was driving. Grandma was in the front seat. Tom and Matt were in the back seat. Tom and Nancy talk about how quiet it got. And not just that the ship was quiet, that all of the noises of nature were gone. There were no crickets, there were no cicadas, there were no frogs, there was no water, there was nothing. Yeah. Everything was silent. And they saw this dish-shaped object like the side of a turtle shell. And suddenly, all of the nature sounds got really loud. And how they talk about really loud, I want to use the term deafening. The next thing she remembers is waking up at the drugstore because her grandma had woken up before her and was in the driver's seat.
Oh, right.
Rewind a minute.
Yeah.
Grandma didn't drive. Grandma never drove. Never drove. And Grandma was in the passenger seat. But now Grandma was in the driver's seat. So Grandma's
going to go run over that reindeer for getting Grandma's going to run over a reindeer right now.
So Grandma tried to wake everybody else up, but nobody woke up. So she drove to the drugstore for help. And Tom talks about how he followed her in because he woke up like on the way. He followed her into the drugstore, and she didn't like go to the counter or anything. I guess she like walked to the back of the drugstore, completely ignored Tom, came back. It was like real weird, real spacey, very dreamlike. And after this incident, like I said, they were harassed so bad that they had to move, which is just so sad.
Yeah, and after she bought the dinner and like...
Right, especially because everybody else fucking saw this shit.
Yeah, right.
What assholes.
Like, everyone else saw this.
Right. So the last person that I want to talk about is Eddie Gulata. And he owns a gas station in Sheffield, Massachusetts now. At the time of all of this, his dad was the chief of police, and he began receiving a bunch of reports of UFOs a few days after this mass sighting. All of these reports said that they saw round silver ships that would land in cornfields and then take up and leave. Gulata's dad thought it was a bunch of baloney.
Yeah.
And stopping for burgers
in a cornfield?
Yeah, as you do. Come on now.
They're getting like popcorn. This is what they're doing. They need popcorn to watch the insanity that is 1969 on Earth.
On the first question, it's all for popcorn.
Popcorn.
First question, answering questions.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Popcorn.
Popcorn. Man, this was really good right now.
Sounds good.
I want popcorn. There's all these reports of these flying saucers landing in farm fields, taking off, and Eddie and his friends would go camping in fields where these saucers were seen to try to see something, but they never did. How the episode ends is Eddie talking. How they end this episode is Eddie talking about how people saw all this stuff back in 1969, and it was all just very dismissed, and nobody did anything with it because that's just crazy. That's a bunch of baloney. All of these reports are coming out from the Navy and the Air Force of shit that they can't explain. And he goes, and these people know what they're talking about. So he's lending truth to all of this. They probably pulled over at this gas station to get gas before they made their way to go talk to the Janes and the Toms. And they ran into this guy. Like, I have a feeling that's how this all went down.
Yeah, they just were like, hey, we're going to interview this guy, okay? Let's set up.
It's
It was
crazy,
probably more
Ralph,
like-
from Friday the 13th. You're all doomed.
Right.
Oh, you're going to go up there, eh?
Oh, God, if anybody from Maine ever tells me, you're going up there, I wouldn't go up there. You got it, sir. You're going that way.
Everybody collectively shits their pants. They turn in their car and they go home. They probably went in there and they're like, hey, I just want to double check these directions in the middle of nowhere. So Google Maps doesn't work there. And then Eddie was probably like, oh, yeah, my dad was the chief of police. And they're like, get the camera.
Yeah.
They're talking to this guy. We have questions.
Yeah, because why else would
They watched Guy Fieri and Eddie was on Dine-Ins, Drivers, and Dashes. You have not had Wawa.
It is not a Wawa, dude. It's a mobile station that looks like they got cigarettes.
Are fantastic. Don't you
they have
disgrace
no
the Wawa.
sandwiches. He's got smokes, chew, and that's about it. And gas.
They usually have bomb sandwiches. They're awesome.
It's a mobile station. It
station.
is not a Wawa.
If there's a dude behind a counter, I will have that sandwich.
There's no sandwich there, man.
There's no sandwiches there.
Not even one.
It is a teeny little building.
Yeah.
You're lucky he has smokes there.
That's true.
And that's it. He probably has liquor too, and probably pork rinds. That is there is no sandwiches.
There's only gas and pork rinds. Get on board.
Part of me really wants to believe it was aliens and
yeah.
a big mass experience, because the witnesses and these people that they talked to seem very reliable. They seem very credible.
Yeah, they do.
Like, they don't seem like crazy people just looking for money. Because if they were looking for money, they wouldn't be dressing like.
There's not much money in conspiracy theory, anyways.
No, true.
Well, no, not in conspiracy theories, but like they can do the talk show circuit and blah blah blah. And they don't do that. You know?
No, they don't.
Horse Tom
Except for
is
the one guy. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but he's not making any money off of it.
That's true.
He's not. And
so what are they getting out of it? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
And
so,
their stories match up. So even if one of them was getting something out of it, you know.
Right. And these are all people that didn't know each other.
Yeah,
like
right.
Jane Green's story, like Jane Green does not refer to these other people like at all. Like they know each other now. But they all kind of like found each other after the fact.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't aliens, okay, we're ready for my crazy government conspiracy. I think it has something to do with LSD testing, especially because it was 1969 and something got into the water source.
If it was an accident, I get it, but but here's the thing: you can't do a study like that if you can't be sure of who the participants are.
Well, but it was 1969 and they didn't have the same standards that we do now. I mean, look at the Stanford prison experiment.
But even so, you don't know. It's such a diffuse population. You just don't know. You have no idea.
I agree. I also know that they were kind of fast and loose with the scientific method back in the day.
But even just
theory tested. But
being someone coming from a political background, we don't have the money or the organization to do stuff like that. We don't. We don't have the money to waste on stuff like that. And so if we did do a test like that, wouldn't we be doing it with more easily observable and measurable results in participants. And
what's to say
I agree.
You're both not right here?
right, I'm
We're
just
both not right, so you're saying we're both wrong.
No, you're both right here.
Oh,
well, yeah, it's possible.
Sorry, bad news bears.
So it could be aliens, is what I'm saying, which is something I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's a big deal for you to say, because that's not something you would normally say.
No, it's not. So
you're usually on the government conspiracy theory train with me.
I usually am on the it's not a conspiracy at all train, but I don't think.
Who's to say Dreadlock Jim, right? Who's got a handful of acid, is running by the water supply that night?
I'm sorry. Wait, who is this?
Dreadlock Jim.
Who is Dreadlock Jim?
Oh, he came down from Woodstock or something.
Can he please be a reoccurring character? Jim, who is a white guy in dreads, which is bad. And then he's been rolling around in some dirt. Yeah, in his tie-dye shirt, and he's got some acid.
Yeah, he just came from the Grateful Dead concert. He's doing fantastic. But what's to say Dreadlock Jim...
Did he do the brown acid?
Yeah. What's to say he didn't fall into the water supply because he's on his own acid? You think it's crazy?
Fell into the water supply? Like, what's her name? Alicia Lamb?
Some of those people had that water, tripped UFOs. The government, we're getting to you, Dominique, heard about that, and that's why there's no case files.
Wait. No. Was Dreadlock Jim like a covert agent?
No, Dreadlock Jim's just a dude who lives on Fifth Street.
He was an idiot. Okay, but then what would explain them all having the same vision or experience? That's what I'm stuck on.
Yeah.
That's why I really don't think it's the acid thing.
No.
That's why I really do think it was aliens.
Yeah, and if you think about it, did we have any kind of technology then that could account for that, even if the government wanted to do some crazy experiment? I don't think we had anything like that.
No. Even records that were leaked and what people have told about, there's nothing that can explain that. Either some random ass, and I know we were joking about Dreadlock Jim, but that is so far-fetched of a theory, I had to throw it out just to try to be funny, to disrupt you for a second.
Because we're going to get into your theories and disrupt you, like every other sentence. It's fine. I get it. All right, Dreadlock Jim. Are we ready to get in? You would be...
Tin Hat Mike.
Yeah.
Tin Hat Mike. All right, Tin Hat Mike, put it on. Let's go. No. Wait, can we do Tin Hat Trevor? Because I like the alliteration. All right, Tin Hat Trevor, let's go.
Let's fucking go. Is it possible that the Berkshire case has ties that reach back further to February 20th in 1951? Now, at that time, President Eisenhower was on a golf retreat.
Wait. What about all this stuff about MUFON?
Yeah.
And the monument? Matt's quick thoughts.
Oh, so Matt's quick thoughts. Nothing on the MUFON site has anything about this case. That really surprises me, that a case this big with what is called the first mass abduction, everything I've researched always references back to unsolved mysteries. Nothing on the MUFON case. I found it strange because this year in our hometown there was a reported case.
Sarah, I'm calling on you.
Great. Okay, so but MUFON is all based on individual reports. So if they didn't report it to MUFON wouldn't have it.
That's true.
Fair point.
Also, I didn't see anything about this year in Crystal Lake. I looked today.
And also, MUFON was established in 1969. Second, it was eventually recognized with a historic monument and proclaimed from Governor Charlie Baker. But the monument was later removed, which I find very interesting that...
He didn't mean to sign the monument, though, to be fair.
How do you not mean to sign? Something comes across your desk, you just have a big rubber stamp, yup.
Yeah, basically, that's exactly what happens.
And it turned out it was on, like, shared land or something, or it was on private property or something like that, opposed to government land, something like that. It was a weird governmental red tape weird thing, which in conspiracy theory land is, like, gold.
Yeah,
But it sounds like it was some kind of weird-ass oversight.
yeah, it does.
It's still a weird thing that you go through that much of an oversight to actually make a historic monument. It was there, and it was removed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then 3 and 4 that I put up, we already covered, which was the Reed brothers' third UFO sighting, and Unsolved Mysteries casting is once again on fucking point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And not just the Reed brothers saw other stuff. Nancy Reed, she's seen UFOs since then. So let's fucking go, tinfoil Trevor.
But is it possible that the Berkshire case has reached further back to February 20th in 1951? President Eisenhower was on a golf retreat in Palm Springs during the night. The accepted story is that President Eisenhower went to the dentist for an emergency tooth chipped on a chicken wing at dinner. I've bit into bones. I've not chipped a tooth on bones. Flashlights, yes. Bones, no.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
did you say flashlights or flashlights?
No, it's a flashlight. A flashlight.
Okay. I had a
Not a
question.
flashlight. You did not have a flashlight.
That,
That would take
in the third grade, that would
on
be
a
really,
flashlight.
really weird.
That
I
would
could
take some
see,
talent.
like, finding your dad's flashlight and being like,
Oh, God!
Oh my god! No! No! I think you broke Matthew. You broke Matt. That's hard to do.
There's
Well-
no feet on the planet.
oh my god.
He needs brain bleach.
I would agree.
Oh, the dog's checking on him.
The dog.
He was whispering sweet nothings in your ear. Don't think about Dad's flashlight. Don't do it. Don't think about it. You're thinking about it.
Not cool.
Don't think about it. Don't think about it. You're thinking about it.
I was in the zone.
That was the best derail ever.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. That was gold.
That just like would not leave my mind. I was like, I have to clarify.
No, I think you should have. I think that was great. That's still broken. Hey, you have a bald spot on your tinfoil hat, dude.
Yeah, sure.
I know. It's a reverse comica.
It's meant to be an actual insult to the Lord instead of like, fuck you, God. Look, take a look at this bitch.
Look at my head.
Take a gander at this right here.
Matt, breathe. He apparently chipped his tooth on a chicken wing.
Yes. Anybody who's bit into a chicken wing, those bones crumble in your mouth. Due to some glaring issues with the accepted story, including a printing that has been documented many times by the Associated Press that said, President Eisenhower died from a heart attack tonight in Palm Springs. This story was redacted 2 minutes later. The Ike met with E.T. story is advanced by Michael Sala, former university. He did a bunch of crap. Runs the Peace Embassy Ambassador Program at the AU Center for Global Peace. Sala states that Ike met with a race of aliens known as the Nordics because the Nordics wanted America to give up our nukes. We were still the only country to use nuclear weapons to this point.
Sounds reasonable. I'm on board.
Yeah.
Because it apparently does something to time and space and impacts extraterrestrial races on other planets.
Actually, I'm not saying I agree with that, but I have to say that is something that would happen if there were aliens and if there were other dimensions and stuff. The use of nukes would impact that.
Right.
Yeah.
In exchange for the arming of America, we would get advanced technology and advanced spiritual wisdom. But due to the start of the Cold War, Eisenhower refused. Later that year, Ike was approached by the Greys. Now, the Greys is what everybody thinks looks like an alien. Think Paul, think what's on Stormy's collar right now, even though this is a podcast, you can't see it.
It's like an upside down teardrop with the big ass eyes.
The Greys approached Eisenhower by saying, we will take a certain amount of Americans every year and return them safe, and we will do medical tests. And in exchange, we would get advanced technology. And Eisenhower accepted. Now, according to Eisenhower's great-granddaughter, and this is the interesting thing, Laura Eisenhower, the Grata Treaty is signed every 10 years. Now, remember this number. When it's signed, it impacts the ways in which the world and humanity, and it's shocking. But she is still keen to meet with Donald Trump in the Oval Office to enlighten him, and she doesn't have a lot of time left to do that. So how does this all tie in?
Wait. So this accord is signed every 10 years?
Yes.
What is the impact on the world and humanity that is so shocking?
Couldn't Obama just tell Trump?
What did she tell Trump?
Yeah.
Did she tell Obama?
And I guess what I'm saying is he was president for 8 years. So how the fuck wouldn't he know about it? Why does she have to be the special?
Donald Marshall explains it all.
That's crazy.
Well, and if it was 1951, then probably Bush signed it.
Yeah.
In 2001. But then again in 2011. So yeah, Obama would have signed it.
So
that means Biden will sign it next year.
Yeah. So then why isn't?
So what the fuck does Trump have to do with it?
This article was posted while Trump was in office.
Okay.
And why does it have to be the granddaughter telling them if other presidents have signed the treaty? Why the fuck?
How does this all tie in?
Maybe the Eisenhowers have to sign it.
Oh, gotcha. Well, but what if they run out of Eisenhower? Someone doesn't.
Right? Maybe that's why she was going to Trump to pass the torch. But it wouldn't matter. He'd be signed. Biden will sign it next year.
I highly doubt.
Is this Laura Eisenhower still alive? We have a lot of questions.
Yeah, come talk to us.
So how does this all tie in? So buckle up and put on your tinfoil hats, fuckers, because here we're blasting off.
Yeah, buckle up. If you didn't buckle up already, put on another one. Here we go.
In 1969, it was 15 years after the treaty was signed. Eisenhower died 6 months before the event, and 3 months before that event, America landed on the moon for the first time. Sure. Then, about 1 month after we got back from the moon, the Berkshire event happened. Also, future President Jimmy Carter reported seeing a UFO with 10 to 12 other people after a Lions Club meeting while he was on campaign for the governor of Georgia. After this event, he stated he'd be the most open UFO president and eventually clammed up. This has nothing to do with anything. It was just cool and involved the same year. Could it be that after the death of the pro-defense and military Eisenhower and the moon landing, the Greys felt that the contract was broken and decided it was in their rights to make a mass abduction and show signs of force? Now, if the Greys are hive-minded, which has been reported, how could this be planned? This is where it all ties in. The Nordics used the Greys, and the Greys are described as biological robots. Or the Nordics themselves were the abductors because in 1969, President Nixon ordered Operation Giant Lance, which Nixon wanted to use nukes to influence the Soviet Union and the communist world to end Vietnam. After this abduction, Nixon started the withdrawal of truth. So, because of all of this, the Nordics were upset that we would use nukes and decided to use a show of force with a mass abduction to show what they could do to scare the American people.
But it didn't scare anyone. They were just
it scared the people that were there, but no one reported it.
And not even that.
My head is warm from the tinfoil hat.
That's why you left the vent on top.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions with all of this, Matt.
Yeah, I have one question. How high were you?
Yes. That is the first question.
First
question, how high were you?
Like the glorious stage between the descent from the cloud into the rational thought stage.
Gotcha. That makes complete sense, actually.
I am glad you took the numerology stuff out.
Oh, God.
It was not good.
That was at the peak stage. I was watching the Unsolved Mysteries, and then the next morning I just woke up and went, Eisenhower.
Eisenhower just shoots out of bed.
That morning, literally waking up and just your first thought of the morning is now, Hey, it's going to be a great day. I should brew coffee. Let me text Kat. Hi, dogs. How's everything's going? It was literally Eisenhower.
And the dogs were like, fuck, what?
What?
Somebody who loves conspiracies more than I do and like wants to find the ties.
And
They
has
can find a
entirely
lot.
too much red yarn.
Yeah, that was 2 days and boredom.
Now that your head is full with an insane amount of nonsense, follow us on Facebook, Dominique Does Life, or Twitter at Progressive Dom, Jack Todd, Does _podcast, and First Question 3. And on Discord, tell us what you think about this insanity.
And what your
What
theories
to
are.
do. This being the holiday season, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Joyous Kwanzaa.
Yule,
Yeah,
happy Festivus. If you like us, you can be the first to subscribe to our Patreon. Follow the link in the description to check out our tiers. Subscribe. Keep asking questions.
make your own reality.
And let the facts be your answers.
Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night.